Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blood Red Morning Bulletin. My name is Amy Gates and today I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com colleague Andrew Beasley. And Andrew, obviously the Jude Bellingham Liverpool, I wouldn't say saga at this point, but obviously um, the rumours rumble on, the speculation continues, it never really ceases. And obviously in light of Borussia Dortmund's exit from the Champions League at the hands of Chelsea, you know, we might see the rumors kind of ramp up a little bit. Obviously, with Dortmund really, unless they somehow pit Bayern to the Bundesliga title, they're not going to win anything this year. And it could be effectively Bellingham's last 3 months in Germany. And obviously, the speculation now as well that Man City, Real Madrid are still lingering around. What do you think of, but not essentially Bellingham's future, because we know eventually he's going to leave, but what do you think Liverpool stand at present in the Bellingham race in comparison to, say, Man City or Real Madrid coming in? Do you think Liverpool, as of early March, do you think Liverpool realistically have a chance of Bellingham, or what way do you see things kind of sitting at this moment?
Yeah, I certainly think they have a chance. I don't know if you saw the clip of Thierry Henry talking on the Champions League show the other night that he does with Jamie Carragher. I think maybe Mika Richards was on there. And he was sort of talking about something else. And he sort of went as an aside, and everyone knows Jude Bellingham wants to join Liverpool. I thought, I didn't know that. I mean, if you know something, Thierry, then, I'm sort of happy to go along with that. But yeah, I think Liverpool have got a good chance. I mean, they're clearly not definitely going to qualify for the Champions League next season, but their position is looking a lot stronger than it did probably about a month ago after, 4 wins and a draw out of 5 clean sheets, 7-0 against Man United. Legally obliged to mention that, obviously. So
where's
they're in the battle for the top. Sorry, mate.
Where's your tin of 7-Up? They should be mandatory this week.
Yeah, well, I bought a load on Monday and I've drunk them all, unfortunately. I'll have to go back down the shops for a few more. Yeah, so Liverpool are looking in better shape than they did a month ago. And I sort of, what do I know about him? But I sort of feel like Bellingham wouldn't be automatically going for the team that, wins the league or anything like that. I don't think it's impossible he'd join Liverpool if they were out of the Champions League, particularly if they make a good show of at least qualifying it. I mean, when it looked like they were going to finish sort of 8th or 9th, it's a hard sell. If they make a good run at it and all right, they finish 5th, you're like, well, okay, they're not, they've not lost it entirely. They've just had a bit of a bad season and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, obviously there's sort of no news, I guess. But yeah, just interesting that comment from Henry. I mean, whether that's the sort of word around the sort of football industry is that, they think it's all sort of going to go through, and maybe Liverpool know that, and maybe Dortmund know that, but nobody's going to say anything just yet. But it was just interesting to hear that from somebody, sort of just mention it casually, like it was sort of common knowledge, because it doesn't feel like it is. Certainly to Liverpool fans, kind of hoping that he'll come and play for them next season. But yeah, interesting comment. We'll have to wait and see, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, I think as you say, with comments like that, it could be from Henry, it could have been a throwaway comment, a flippant remark. But as you say, he's in the circles of the inner workings of football, so maybe he knows something that the public domain do not. But I do think that if you look at, say, the 3 teams, City, Liverpool, Real Madrid, you do think that Liverpool need him the most. You would argue, obviously Liverpool or Real Madrid have the likes of Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, Camavinga, Tchouaméni. And Luka Modric doesn't seem to be getting any worse as he gets older. He seems to get better. He ages like a fine wine. So you don't think Real Madrid necessarily need him. Obviously, they want to look to the future. And Bellingham, being 19, he's got a bright future ahead. But yeah, I think Liverpool generally need him the most. And I think maybe Bellingham also recognises that yeah, like I can make a major difference here to the midfield. And that probably also could play into his ego a little bit. And he's like, yeah, this is where I want to go because Liverpool need me the most and they will rely on me the most. Whereas Real Madrid and City, not that he would just be another figure in midfield, but I think he would have a bigger influence at Liverpool. Would you agree?
Yeah, you'd have to think so. I mean, obviously, the sort of the demise of Liverpool's midfield has perhaps been overstated a bit with how they've played in the last couple of weeks, particularly. They're all great against United last weekend and stuff like that. But clearly, there's a space or two or three for some, young, up-and-coming, excellent midfielders like Jude Bellingham. And I think the key thing we've got to remember, sort of almost keep forgetting, you mentioned it there, that he's 19. I mean, he could come and play for Liverpool for 5 years and still go to Real Madrid, let's say, as much as that would pain Liverpool fans. But he could still go to Real Madrid and still only be 25, having done half a decade with Liverpool. I mean, he's so high up in the game and he's not even 20. So there's sort of that to consider as well. I mean, Liverpool fans won't want to think of them as a sort of stepping stone to Real Madrid. But it is sort of the reality of it. I mean, if they can get Bellingham now, get the next 5 years, and then maybe he moves on after that. Because you have to remember as well, like, he's played a lot of football. In sort of footballing age, he's probably older than he seems. When you look at his average minutes compared to an average 19-year-old, I mean, he's obviously way above everybody else. He's sort of already sort of got the minutes in his legs of a 24-year-old, I think it is, something like that. So, if Liverpool have him when he's sort of at the playing age of sort of 24 to 29, say, and then maybe he goes on to Madrid, 25 in reality, but maybe with the sort of legs of a 30-year-old sort of thing, that mightn't be the worst thing either. So, you do feel like Liverpool need him the most, and you sort of feel like this might be the best time to get him, rather than say if he's gone to Madrid for 5 years first, then maybe moves on. I think this way round is certainly, I think, preferable. Easy to say that, of course. I mean, who knows what he's going to do? But
well, I think you make a good point there, because as you're saying, in football years, he's technically, perhaps a bit older, and especially given the position that he plays in midfield, which kind of has more wear and tear on the body than perhaps any other position on the field. Perhaps maybe with the exception of fullbacks, especially the type of player that Bellingham is. He's not a player that sits and,
no,
sits at the base of midfield and kind of dictates play. He's up and down, and that has a lot of wear and tear on the body. So, as you say, if he goes to Real Madrid first, the time Liverpool get him, not that he could be past his peak, but physically his best years could be behind him if he does 5 years of, Real Madrid sitting in their midfield up and down every week. As you say, he could be a lot older, football-wise, and not perhaps technically. He could be 25, but as you say, he could actually be 29, 30 by the time Liverpool get him. So you make a really valid point. It's better to have him now and lose him later rather than get him later. But on to another player who is highly up there in the game and who's still very young is Kylian Mbappe. And considering that, again, we're coming into the springtime, and again, we're talking about another PSG European battle job, there are questions now going around that Mbappe really has to leave now. Like, he can't continue with PSG in Liga. Where do you sit on the Mbappe issue? Do you think, it is time for him to go and he should have left a long time ago, or do you think he's just like in a golden cage and he'll never escape?
It's very hard to know. It sort of feel like, because obviously he signed, was it last summer he signed a new contract, sort of forced into it, virtually owns the club these days, that sort of thing. I mean, you'd think if he wants to win the Champions League, which I'm sure he does, moving on would be the logical thing. But clearly everything at PSG is sort of geared towards him, and that must be quite hard to walk away from. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be geared towards him if he went to Real Madrid, probably the most likely team. But, it wouldn't be to the same extent. So I guess it's one of those where really it's what does he want from his career? I mean, it would be hard to, probably have to take a pay cut pretty much anywhere, which obviously he could afford to do that, of course. But you know what I mean? It's sort of whether the status of, the pay and stuff like that means something to him. There's all these sorts of things to consider. But purely footballing, if we just look at that, I mean, they're obviously no closer to winning the Champions League. I think it's interesting. It could be complete coincidence, but the 2 years they've done reasonably well in the Champions League were the 2 years where there was no fans in the stadiums for the later stages. It's like there's obviously less pressure when that happened. I mean, we saw it in the Premier League. There were more away wins than there's ever been before. Without that sort of the pressure from the stands and stuff like that. And it may be coincidence, but it's sort of starting to turn into quite a large sample size. Like I think it's 5 of the last 7 years they've gone out in the last the round of 16. And all right, like yesterday, it's Bayern Munich. It's not like they're going out to Club Brugge or whatever in the last 16. They're playing some good teams in those ties. I think they've gone out to Manchester City, Real Madrid, if I remember rightly. Obviously, the infamous Barcelona one where they were sort of 5-1 up and went out, I think it was. So it's not like they're going out to bad teams, but they just don't look capable of beating these teams. And at the same time, you're going to have to beat these teams at some point to win the Champions League. It's inevitable. You can't. You can get a reasonably kind run, but chances are you'll come up at least one of the sort of real top teams somewhere along the way. And they've shown very little signs of sort of being able to beat them. So purely footballing level, you'd think it makes absolute sense for Mbappe to leave. But as I said, there's so many sort of factors in his relationship with that club that, it's sort of very hard to know what he thinks on a sort of personal level would be best.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit a very good point there. In terms of where does his ambition lie? Because I mean, if he is ambitious as a footballer, I mean, he's already won the World Cup, and he played in another final. If his ambition is to win the Champions League, he simply has to leave, because you don't think the PSG, if they don't win it, if they haven't won already, and if they don't win it, you don't see how he could justify staying at PSG, where they play, maybe 2-3 semi-competitive league games a year, and then they go into Europe, and it's the continual early spring battle job. And as you say, they play good teams, but it's relative in terms of how much PSG spend, the players they have. It's not like just it's Mbappe and 8 or 9 average players. It's Mbappe plus Neymar plus Messi plus the likes of Marco Verratti, Sergio Ramos, Gianluigi Donnarumma. Like, PSG have a really good team, but I just think the level of competition that he faces in France, like he probably plays in second gear half the time in France. So I just think if he has ambition, if he wants to reach the true upper echelons of the game, he has to leave. And as you say, he has to take a pay cut because he's getting outrageous sums of money in France. But I do think he has to leave if he wants his legacy to be something really positive. It's not just in France, but in European football in general. He has to leave, because staying in France is doing him no favors, really. But as you said, there was a lot of politics involved in him staying last year, and there was rumors of the French president Macron kind of leaning on him to kind of make him to stay in France because it's better for the country. But I think he needs to basically be decisive and say, right, that's it, I'm out. I need to go to a team that can actually, realistically win the Champions League, which is kind of the only trophy left for him, which is madness considering Mbappe's 22, 23. So I think the time is right for him. He has to leave. Like, he can't continue, being out at the round of 16, as you say, for 5 of the last 7 seasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, what really, if we assume they're not going to win the Champions League, it doesn't look very likely anytime soon. Then, what is there any joy really in winning Liga year after year? I mean, they don't even win it every single year. I mean, there was a couple of times they haven't. I think one was while he was with Monaco, to be fair. But the point is, they don't even definitely win the league every year. And then without that, as you say, not many competitive games, certainly by the standards of the Champions League. I mean, for all that it's difficult for Premier League teams to win the Premier League because of the level of competition, they're playing lots of games against Champions League standard sort of opposition, and they are at least better set when the competition comes around. But the other thing as well, I mean, obviously we're saying, all right, they're playing these tough teams in the knockout phase, but they're often playing them because they haven't even won their group, and they're often in groups they should be winning, and they're finishing second, and then you get Bayern Munich or whatever, Didn't they finish second this time because Benfica won 5-1 or something on the final day? It was something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, Benfica look a better bet to win the Champions League. I don't just mean this season, because obviously they're in and PSG are out, but a team like that, a young sort of team of exciting players who are playing as a team rather than a sort of collection of superstars, almost feel like a better bet to win the Champions League than PSG, which on paper sounds absurd, but, I don't think anybody's going to want to face Benfica in the next round, as they'll probably be underdogs if they get one of the real big teams. But, a proper team with a proper plan and a proper system and all playing together and stuff like this. I mean, it proven over the years that it can often be more successful. And yeah, you just think Mbappe has to leave, but like we say, there's money, there's politics. You know, it's not going to be easy, even if he does want to go.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. You know, the current PSG team has shades of the first Galactico Real Madrid era, like 2003 to 2006, when you had the likes of, you know, Beckham, Ronaldo, Zidane, Figo. They were a collection of superstars rather than a well-drilled machine. And you're right about Benfica. You know, Benfica would probably, and not just as you say, because they remain in the competition and PSG don't, but Benfica play as a team, you know, rather than a collection of, you know, well-paid superstars, which PSG are. And we've seen the results of that. You know, like, they never let a glove on Bayern. Bayern beat them, what was it, 4-0 over on aggregate, or 3-0 in aggregate. And as you say, they didn't top the group because Benfica scored more goals. I think it was against Maccabi Tel Aviv, or Maccabi Haifa, sorry. So they didn't top the group. They're not winning Liga every year. So you feel like, what is Mbappe there for apart from money? It's like, why would any player go to PSG if you really possessed ambition and you wanted to win things? PSG will be one of the last places you'd want to go to. But I think we'll leave it there for today, Andrew. We've slated PSG enough.
But I could carry on, but you know.
Yeah, we can do another hour of this. Like, we've work to do. So, thanks for joining me, Andrew, and thanks everyone for tuning in. And see you again next time.